I saw this weekend, and you got to give credit to Miami too. I'm not discounting what Miami's performance and in particular the quarterback there. He had a great game, and the defense did well. Louisville's offensive line, they are in a race with Florida State to see who has the worst offensive line in all of the country. I mean, you got to give credit to the Malik Cunningham. He kept them in that game for a while. Just because of his athleticism. And what's the name of that running back? Hawkins. I don't know.
Fabian Hawkins.
Yeah, yep. Talk about a gamer that guy is.
He's not a big guy either.
No. He's a really good player. Between Cunningham and Hawkins, and really Hawkins mainly, they kept him in that game for a while, but their luck ran out at the end of the game, and Miami opened it up on them. But Miami did impress me. I realized that we don't have a lot to go off of now. They beat UAB, and they beat a mediocre at best, what seems to be anyway, Louisville team outside of those two players that we just talked about. I still was impressed with Miami. Miami is going into, obviously, this week against Florida State. We'll talk about that later in the show. And then they get to play Clemson on October 10th, which, by the way, your boy Pigskin Pete here bought tickets to that game this weekend, so I will be there.
I saw that on Twitter.
Yes.
Nice.
Overpaid, but I'll be there.
You want to go to that one. And there's probably going to be about, I saw 16, 18,000, something like that at Clemson.
Yeah, I think 18,000 is the capacity. Of course, they play the Citadel this weekend, and I don't think they sold that out the markup on all these games, if you're a team that's lucky enough to be allowing any fans at all, which Clemson is, you're going to be paying 3 to 4 times markup on the normal ticket price. So I just don't see people coming off of $150 to go watch them beat up on the Citadel, unless you just have that expendable income. So I think the vast majority of the fans there this week were probably students.
Yeah, I would think so. So. And I saw Trevor Lawrence threw 9 passes, 1 hit the ground, and then he called it a day, as did Travis Etienne after rushing for about 75 or 80 yards. And then it's one of those games where I would say for most teams that they get to play all 105 or 85, or that's the scholarship or the roster. But Dabo does that almost every game anyway.
Well, they played 95 players this week, which it was not to be. That wasn't unexpected. And yes, for the past 2 years now, Clemson has played more players on average than any other Power 5 team.
So Miami, Louisville, this was definitely, so this tells us a lot about the college football season to date, Pete, is that that's the biggest game of the season. Wasn't the best game, but it's the biggest game so far that's been played. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like an idiot based on what we discussed last week, because I should have dumbed it down to this. And I did a show right after the game was complete, and you can imagine, and in the comments section I basically took the clip of our discussion and analysis on the game last week, and I posted that, and people are all over us, as you can imagine, and that's part of the fun. We get the pick wrong, and people go on. But what I find funny is I get termed and named the Miami hater, because you pick them to lose one game. You hate them, you're a hater. So I reminded people, I picked you guys to go 8-4 last year. You went 6-7. I picked you 9-3 the year before that. You went 7-6. I'm not exactly the hater. Yeah, I'm going to pick you to lose a game once in a while. But, I even said this. It should have hit me when I said this, but Louisville had the near elite offense. But if you don't have an offensive line, we'll have to reevaluate that. We'll see when they play better teams. But anyway, from a skill position standpoint, speed, they've got a top 15 offense in the nation, and they did last year. And all those guys were coming back. So I kind of rested on that they had the chemistry, whereas Miami's got just as much speed and talent on offense, but they haven't played together. So I was resting on that. Satterfield's a really good coach. They're at home. But if I'm going to rate Louisville's offense like an 8 or an 8.5, and I'm saying this entering the game, I was thinking like 8.5, and Miami's maybe a 7. Again, they've got just as much talent, but we haven't seen it. And Louisville's defense is a 4, 4.5 to be kind, and Miami's is more like an 8. I should have just put those together and said Miami's going to win this game. The impressive thing about Miami is any win would have been good. Louisville had a lot of cachet coming into the season, 8-5 coming off a bowl win. A lot of people like them coming into this season. So any win on the road against Louisville, as a slight underdog would have been great. But man, Miami, after about the second or third possession, they were clearly the better team. They won by 13, and that was not indicative of how much they dominated that game.
No, it's not. And I'm guilty of this. I overvalued Louisville based on the fact that they went from 2 wins 2 years ago to 8 wins last year. I overvalued them, but outside of the quarterback and the running back position, and they got a couple of really good receivers too, but that offensive line, you can't have a good offense with no offensive line. Just ask Florida State about it.
And I said that again. Another thing I should have connected. So every so often, don't you make those picks where you're like, you're going to miss picks. You can't get them all right. Of course, you're going to miss, against the spread, hopefully 43%, something in that range. You're still going to make money. So, but you feel okay about the game. It just turned on you. But sometimes you're like, you're only like 5-10 minutes into the game and you're like, man, that was dumb. Why didn't I see this? Why didn't I see this coming? And that's my first one of the year right there. But 5-2 against the spread, I'll take it. So I'm 9-5 against the spread to start the season.
You did much better than me. That's why I'm very excited. Now I see Uncle Lou's in here. So of course we have the Lunch Money Show where we talk about the betting lines, excuse me, every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. So we'll be on tomorrow. And I went back and I looked, Mark, because I'm not doing well this year. I mean, we're only 2 weeks in as far as the betting goes. I'm below 500. I'm actually doing better on my NFL picks than I am on my college. Maybe I need to start an NFL channel. I don't know. Clearly, I don't know anything about it.
I've wanted to do that for a long time.
But what I noticed, because I keep a book of everything I've done, every bet I've made for the past few years while I was on YouTube. And so I went back last year because I had a great year last year. I was close to 60% at the end of the season. And what I noticed was more than 3/4 of the bets I made last year were on the SEC games. And I did most of my winning was with the SEC and Ohio State. That was I bet Ohio State every week and won because they covered, I think, 11 out of 12 games in the regular season. But anyway, so that's why I'm looking forward, aside from seeing the football product on the field, is from a betting standpoint, I'm looking forward to starting to bet on the SEC again. To me, they're easier to bet on because, like we mentioned earlier in the show, the ACC has so much parity. I mean, there is no clear-cut second best team in the ACC. So it's Clemson, and then you have a big conglomerate of everybody else, and you have a couple teams at the bottom, but it's just a big hodgepodge, and you just don't know who's going to win week to week, and that even makes it harder to bet against the spread, which is already a disadvantage. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, well, I pretty much prioritize the games based on the quality of the teams and the games every week when I watch the game. So truth be known, I'm probably watching the SEC, then the Big Ten more than anyone. And then it's the ACC, and I probably discard the Big 12 to a large extent because it's a lot of Kansas State, Iowa State type games, which I'm going to watch that game if it's the only thing I've got to watch. But if it's up against like two good SEC games, a good Big Ten game, of course, those games just get buried for me. I can only watch so much.
Yes.
Probably just know more about the SEC. So I'm curious, at just under 60% last year, how many games roughly did you predict over the course of the entire season?
So I'm actually going with the ones that I actually bet on, and I did it an average of 4 to 5 a week. That's usually my thing there. So but I did all 12 weeks plus the bowl season. So you work it out there. It was over 100 games that I actually bet. And then probably somewhere around 15 bowl games that I bet on.
See, I think I alluded to this last week that when I'm in the betting game, which I'm not this year for whatever reason, I just checked my account. I didn't go in there, just didn't bother with it. But I have been for whatever, 7, 8, 10 years. Is that I just play all the games I pick. I just figure, my system should win, so I got to play them all, regardless of my level of confidence. I'm going to play them all.
And on average, how many a week? 25 games, or?
Yeah, I'm playing 25 games. I picked like 288, so 171 and 127 against the spread. I was at 57.5% last year against the spread, and I bet all those games.
That's interesting. If you're that high of a percentage winning on betting that many games, that's impressive, sir, because I feel like the more games I bet, the more I'm going to have a chance to lose.
The ones I'm thinking about eliminating are the plus 20, 21 point, like 3 touchdowns and over. Because I got 3 philosophies about this, Pete. Okay. One would be if it's an Ohio State Rutgers game and the spread's 42. Okay. You don't know who's going to be on the field in the fourth quarter of this game. You don't know who's actually going to be playing for either team. Even the bad team might pull its starters. You don't know the coach's philosophy of, let's just 3 runs and punt the last quarter. We're not putting down the throttle. We're going to coast home with a 17-point win, or we're going to keep passing. We're going to keep playing. We're going to keep scoring. And you also don't know how hard these teams are trying at that point, especially the better team. And in some instances, the games get completely out of hand because the better team, the Clemsons of the world, even though you would think that they would be backing off, well, their third stringers are in the game. Those guys want to score and win, and they want to look good. So they get in there, and they're better than the other team's first teamers. So they just continue to pour it on.
So do you bet on, have you bet on Clemson at all this year?
I haven't bet on anybody this year. I just picked the games.
Okay.
Now the Citadel didn't have a line, so I didn't pick that game. But I took Wake Forest in the 34. I took the 34, so that was a bit of a backdoor cover. That I didn't feel real good about that one, but that's what it was.
Clemson's, aside from the fact that I'm a fan, I don't bet on them. They're just too hard for all the reasons you just said.
Yeah.
When they play a Notre Dame or somebody like that, it's a more evenly matched team. That might be an interesting bet. But when they playing the Citadel and Wake Forest or whoever, those inflated lines scare me because they're going to play 95 players.